Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Time to Shine, a video podcast series that spotlights heart-centered spiritual entrepreneurs who are on a mission to heal the world. Today we have Elliot joining us. She's launching her brand new resilience coaching practice today on our show. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about what you do, Kai?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Christina. And it's really cool talking to you in person for once instead of always like on Messenger or something. And it's good to be here on the show in front of all of your spiritual business peeps. Okay, so what I do is I spread the message of body positivity for the New Age spirituality field. And I really just support, spiritual entrepreneurs, and then also people who are suffering with illness or disabilities themselves to kind of like free themselves of this shame that we all kind of carry about our whatever our condition or illness or disability may be. I speak and I coach about that topic. I eliminate the shame and the stigma about it. And basically, I just help people to not feel so terrible about their illness or disability. And I also offer body positive business checkups to conscientious spiritual entrepreneurs. Does that make sense? I always like, what do I do?
Makes sense.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, because you're so multifaceted, you are so involved in the different aspects of it. I know that you also read tarot, so you have many passions and interests. You're multi-passionate, as we call you. So for those that may not know, what is body positivity in the New Age spirituality field? Maybe there are some of us here who haven't quite heard of that term or what it's all about. So what, in your words, in your opinion, is the difference between being body positive and just being body positive in general and being body positive in the New Age spirituality field?
That's a really good question. So body positivity movement with women started in the 90s from a couple of ladies' couch, from what I understand. And it's all about to be a shape and a certain size and to fit into these kind of very strict beauty standards of what is beautiful as a woman. And the body positive movement, just kind of, it's like this big grassroots movement where we're so sick of seeing like these ads with really skinny people and just totally unrealistic photoshopped images. But most of all, I think people are sick of the expectation that in order to be lovable or in order to be acceptable as a woman, that you have to measure up to this standard beauty recipe. So, the body positive movement in general is so wonderful, and people have jumped on board with it. We've even kind of like overthrown advertisers' campaigns to where they now have like plus size models on stuff, and I just think it's so empowering. And so us as women, we really kind of like demanded this from the advertisers and demanded this from society that, you aren't going to tell us whether we're acceptable or whether we're beautiful. We're going to be empowered, and we're going to claim our beauty, and we're going to claim our power as women. Just right now, some pinnacle of, outfit or whatever, the high school jeans or something. It's we're beautiful and we're acceptable and worthy now. So, how that ties into what I do is, like within the spirituality field, we're kind of like, we're sold kind of this like health and this vitality that if we're spiritual enough and if we meditate enough or if we pray enough or if we're enlightened enough, that we'll never have anything bad happen to us ever again. We're just going to have like the ultimate, most miraculous life ever. And so the ideal in the spiritual field especially is one of health and bigger and never having these bad circumstances, whether it's just, whether it's something that happens to you that's bad, or whether it's an illness, a disability, or condition. So we're kind of sold this thing that we have to be healthy, and healthy equals spiritual, and being free of these negative things ever happening to us equals being spiritual. But the thing is, and I'm sure you know, Christina, is that that's the farthest thing from spiritual, right? Just because we meditate or we have our tarot practice or spiritual practice isn't going to guarantee that nothing bad ever happens to us. So right. What my movement really is about, the body positivity and the spiritual field, is taking back our power as people with illness, disability, or conditions, and saying, nope, I'm not, we don't have to not love ourselves or hate ourselves, or eat nothing but raw vegan until we're good enough or healthy enough to measure up to somebody else's standards of what it means to be spiritual, or what it means to be acceptable, or what it means to be, it goes on. We're shamed, we're New Age illness shamed for who we are, basically. And so it's taking that power back and claiming our true power and who we really are, with or without our illness or condition.
So the bottom line of what positive body,
still there?
Yes. So the bottom line of what body positivity is, can you tell us what that actually teaches us? Yeah, we see all these standards and we see all these movements and things like that. But if you could summarize body positive in just a couple words or less, what do you think that would be?
It's self-love and self-acceptance. Radical self-love, radical self-acceptance.
I think that this is my own opinion, and I'm a little snarky anyways, but I think if we wanted to live up to these unrealistic standards, we would just go back to the church. We would just go back to religion. And so I think that's a really important distinction, to do that. Spirituality and body positivity, and spirituality means acceptance of all bodies and self-love. And it's not that we have to measure up in some way. So I think just anybody who's watching that doesn't really understand the distinction between, religion and spirituality and how body positivity fits in that. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think it depends on views too. And we were talking about that in another post earlier this week, that each religion and each spiritual belief, each one of those kind of sections of our universe or whatever, there's the Buddhists believe this, the Christians believe this, whoever the woo-woo New Ager people believe this. It's we all have our different beliefs about why you get an illness or why you get a disease or a disability. And so when we get into this argument or this disagreement, or not seeing eye to eye with one another about someone's illness or disability, and someone is saying, no, you caused it with your mind or whatever, that it's really, that's their own spiritual belief, right? So they're maybe more into the law of attraction or the New Age type of thing, but they're leaving out, some people may believe in karma. They may believe that it's your karma, if they're Buddhist, that caused your illness. So,
or part of your life purpose in some way, like the law of attraction kind of says.
Yeah, I think you broke up just a little bit. I missed the last part.
Oh, about you posted that thing about the law of attraction, and about how we kind of invoke these situations into our life to, in their words, to more or less become more enlightened more quickly. So there's a whole bunch of different ways and reasons and beliefs that kind of go into it. So transcending all of that, cutting through all of those beliefs out there, body positivity, in your view and what you're trying to tell us, is that regardless of how we attracted this or what our beliefs are about why this is even happening to us, we really have to start with the self-love and the self-acceptance. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, that's within. And then when it comes to without, or our community or people we may know with illness, disabilities, or something bad happened, having the mutual respect, the respect that the other person may not share the same beliefs as us, so not telling someone else how it is for them or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a mutual respect and understanding.
So it's really interesting because it's almost like an etiquette, an unspoken etiquette, that the same as you wouldn't shame someone, especially women, because women tend to be a lot more marginalized and targeted, but the same that you wouldn't shame a woman for, say, being overweight or older, like ageism and stuff like that. We're talking about something a little bit different, but similar. Is called ableism. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So trying to think, it's kind of like almost two different things. I'm going to try
Mm-hmm.
to answer the first part first, so it's short. So just like we wouldn't go up to somebody and say, hey, I noticed your fatness problem, here's a diet pill. That's like very rude, right? We all can
Mm-hmm.
agree that that would be so rude. Just etiquette wise, you wouldn't do that. And so it kind of is a parallel with people with illness. So if you know someone has an illness, you're not going to say, hey, I see you have an illness. It's because of your terrible mindset. Want to buy my
Mm-hmm.
mindset program? So it's like you're not going to do that. It's rude, right? You're not going to point out someone's flawed health or, disabilities. It can be really intense to have a disability, especially if you end up having to quit your career or not being able to work, or you've lost a limb or something,
Very
very drastic.
traumatizing.
It's traumatizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're bringing that up just in, hey, how's it going? I noticed you're missing a leg or something. It's just it's just you don't want to do it. Etiquette wise, you don't want to do it. But then also it's very personal and it is very traumatizing. So you don't want to necessarily bring up something that they may not like thinking about very much. Someone doesn't want to think about, that they may need to lose some weight, and you don't want to think about how you may not be enjoying the best health or the health that you'd want to be. So like etiquette wise, I like how you said that, because it really is kind of like unspoken rules. And so what I'm trying to do with my work is make the rules not unspoken, to where we can form a dialogue and kind of improve things, for people with illness and disabilities in the spiritual field, so that people are educated as to, hey, you might not want to, say it's someone's mindset caused their illness or whatever.
Right. We have a couple
Yeah.
comments that I would like to go ahead and read out loud. Pamela Jones says, I'm sick. I'm so sick of that. The so-called reason that we caused it or attracted the really horrible things that happened to us. You're not alone, Pamela. A lot of people feel that way. Catherine Wilson says, I have very fluid beliefs about spirituality, but I really don't like the shame and victim blaming for illness. I'm very into simply dealing with the issue and moving forward. We just talked about this. You and me just talked about this yesterday. There's no need to dwell. Right. So you can spend a lot of time wondering why this ever happened to you. And of course, there's a million beliefs out there that you can explore and discover that way. And maybe it has something for you and maybe it doesn't. But at the end of the day, you still have a disability, you still have a condition, you still have a disease, and you still have to live your life. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you do have an illness or disability, and you're either to the point where you cannot hide it anymore, like it's visibly obvious, or it's interfered with your life so much that people ask you about it, it really becomes intrusive, because you become known as like the sick person or the disabled person or the weird person who can't get their rheumatoid arthritis under control or whatever it is, and that becomes almost your reputation. And so then people will, every time they see you, they'll want to know every single nitty gritty detail about your health, and you end up kind of like getting grilled about it. And then it just becomes like really overwhelming, like, whereas you might want to focus on just like whatever, like if you went to a meditation class, you're like, I'm just here to meditate, man. I really
right.
didn't want to go in do all this other stuff. So it can just get overwhelming, like energetically.
So, for those that have maybe never even dealt with this topic, I know that this is a very niche topic. And if you don't have a disability or a condition or something in your life that is relatable to this, you may not even notice that it's happening around you. You may be almost oblivious to it. So, this is also for you to kind of teach you how to navigate this when you see this, just the same as if you were to see racism happen or sexism happen, anything like that in your environment that you consciously want to change the outcome, change the dialogue that's happening with that. How does it actually manifest? So let's put it into perspective for the people that maybe have never been through this before.
Yeah, I think when you asked about ableism a minute ago, so I think that would be helpful to just kind of define, or my definition of ableism, I guess. So my definition of ableism is the belief that being disabled, having an illness, or having a condition is always worse than being healthy. So it's saying you're less of a person, you're less spiritual, you're not good enough, you need to change. You know, you have to just do all these things. You got to become vegetarian. You have to chant 90 times a day. You know, you just have to like eradicate this sickness from your body, and you can't rest until you do. But, you know, illness and disability, they can drag on for 10 years, 20 years, the rest of your life. I mean, how are you going to go about your day-to-day life doing nothing? You're going nothing but naturopaths. I'm going to this practitioner, chiropractor, acupuncture, you know, Reiki healers, blah, blah. And it's like, it never ends, right? And everybody wants you to keep doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that to cure yourself, heal yourself. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I've had this 10 years now. So you get to the point where you accept your illness. So like the 5 stages of grief, you know, and loss. I mean, it is a loss that people go through when they lose their health. And so you get to this point of acceptance of your illness, and you start to love yourself for who you are. You get out of this self-loathing and this self-hating that we kind of are taught in society, which society can be a little bit ableist in its views when it's, you know, disabled is always worse. Illness is always worse. It's always less spiritual. You have to do all this stuff to fix it. It's like this feeling that we need to be fixed. And really, when you have an illness or disability, it's more like we are who we are. Like we maybe have been made a bit different than other people, or we just are a bit different than other people, but different doesn't mean worse. It doesn't mean we're terrible people. It's just, we're just a little bit different, you know? So
yeah, I'm interested if you can explain what that difference is briefly, the spoon theory. I know I'm also a spoonie too, and I know you talk about spoonies, and it's a very different lifestyle. So if you could just briefly tell us what the spoon theory is.
Yeah, so the spoon theory was developed as a way for people who don't have illness or disability to understand what people who do have one go through. And there was a lady, I want to say her name was Christine something. Anyways, she has a website, and I can link it. I can link it after the top.
You can Google spoonie and you'll get all the information you need to.
Yeah, spoon theory. But anyway, so she wanted to describe what it was like to live day by day with the fatigue, but it's not like normal people fatigue. It's dramatic. It's like you're peeling yourself off the floor, like you got hit by a car, like every day. And when you have chronic illness, your body just is, it's just going to be like that. You're not going to feel better. You're not going to sleep a little bit and feel better, you know, like a normal person would. So she was in a diner and she had a bunch of spoons, and she just grabbed them off the tables around her. And she said, okay, imagine you wake up in the morning and you have 7 spoons. This represents all your energy for the whole entire day. And once you're out of spoons, you're done. You just have to lay down and your day is over. You got to cancel all your plans and that's it. And then she's like, every activity you do costs a spoon, or maybe more than 1 spoon, depending on what it is. And so she says, okay, so you want to take a shower? She's like, that's a spoon. So she takes away a spoon. And then she's like, you want to make yourself a meal? That's another spoon. It takes it away. And she's like, you want to go shopping? 4 spoons. And she takes them
Wow.
all away. That's going to take away a lot of your energy as someone with chronic illness. And then she's like, you want to, I don't know, go to your kid's soccer game or something and mom a little bit, whatever it is normal people would take for granted. She's like, that's going to be your other 2 spoons. And she's like, you're done. You're out of spoons. She's like, that party with the block party that all the other moms are going to after soccer, you can't go. You're out of spoons. You're done. You have to cancel and you got to tell them, sorry, I can't go. My illness, blah, blah, blah. So that spoon theory is a way to understand how people with chronic illness are budgeting our energy constantly. It's a
Hmm.
day by day thing.
I didn't know about that for the longest time, and I'm a spoonie in that I have PCOS, which has a whole host of different types of symptoms from it, for everything from hypothyroidism to chronic fatigue and all that kind of stuff. And I have a couple of experiences personally where I dealt with being shamed for this in a way that really lacked any type of understanding of what the real issue is. So I'm wondering if you could tell us maybe one or two examples with your specific condition of how you've actually been shamed.
Yeah, I'd love to hear yours too. That sounds interesting because I'm always like hearing myself talking. So if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear yours too, and I'll tell you one of mine. So
Okay.
I went to a drum workshop where you make your own drum. I have my drum like right here. So, you make your own drum. And the guy was teaching us everything about it. It was the whole weekend long. It was like Saturday, 8 hours, like Sunday, like 4 hours. And then we came back like a week later after they had dried a little bit. And then we did some activated the drum and, sang them to life and this sort of thing. And so it was a long workshop, and being upright is a real challenge for me. I'm actually sitting on a donut right now, and I stay flat actually 22 hours of every single day. So it's a constant challenge with my particular illness to even be upright just like this at all. So I knew this 8 hour Saturday class was just going to kill me because I'm like 2 hours, I'm okay. And then after that, it's like, whoa, I really start to feel it. And I start ending up having like some serious neurological problems after that. So I brought actually, it was a cushion to sit on. It wasn't actually my donut, it was a Zafu, the meditation cushions with the buckwheat.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
So we were sitting at the table messing with the leather and the whatever we were doing, and I brought the Zafu to sit on because it was those really hard foldable metal chairs that they have at yoga centers
The
and
cheap
stuff.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like hard as a rock. So I knew there's no way I'm going to make it with that chair. So I had this big old Zafu, and I'm sitting on it, and I'm all taller than everybody, so I stick out a little bit. And then he's like, "Oh, what's that for?" And I'm just like, "Oh, well, I have this genetic condition, and it just makes it harder for me to sit with my back, the way it is. It just I have to sit on this so I feel better." And then he was like the teacher of the class, and he's like, "Well." He's like, that what you think about comes about. And if you don't want to heal, you're never going to heal. And I had a back condition, and I had a herniated disc, and, I just like ate good food and went to the acupuncturist, and I was better. And then he looks at me and he's like, when you want to heal, you'll heal. And he just went this whole big spiel. And I was just like kind of humiliated a little bit because it's like you're in a class with like 10 other people and you're just like, I want to learn about rawhide or meditation or drumming. And then he's like lecturing me about how I basically caused my own illness with my mindset. And I'm like, so then you're in the awkward position of he just like said this thing that's totally not true, that I attracted my illness, like law of attraction. And do I argue with him in front of the whole class or say, no,
Right.
that's not how is? Or do I go into my private medical condition and tell this class of 10 to 15 people my personal medical history? that's awkward too. So you get put in this position where you're just like, ew, like no matter which way you go, it's kind of icky and awkward because there's
It
so many
almost
different.
sounds predatory because he is approaching you in a situation where he is obviously in a clear role of authority and
Mhm.
he's in a group dynamic where people are probably not going to want to speak up because then the rest of the class is going to be extremely uncomfortable too.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, you know, so 88% of disabilities are totally invisible. So you're going to look at the people and the other 15 people in the class, and you're just going to say, oh, those are all healthy people. They probably agree with this teacher. How do you know? They probably had a disability themselves and were like shrinking inside, like, oh, that's so messed up. But what do they do? Do they like out themselves and cause like some weird, awkward scene with this teacher and say, no, you're wrong or something? So then it's not just hurting me as the person that's embarrassed, it's also hurting whoever else in that class who had an invisible disability too.
You have to wonder what is so wrong with him that he had to pick the sorry for using this term, but the weakest, most special looking person in the room to actually attack in that sort of way. And I think a lot of the times when people are approaching you in that sort of way, like they feel like they have to school you on it, is it's almost like an assault to their own ego. And remember, ego not as in like, oh, I'm the best at everything, but ego is in the self defense mechanism that we have that protects our beliefs about our reality, right? And so for him coming seeing you, and it must have been such an assault on his ego to know that you can still be doing everything else everybody else is doing that's so-called normal or looks normal and still be disabled or have a condition or something like that. So it's interesting to me the dynamics that go on because it's in that moment it's more about them than it is about you because what was the point of all of that really?
Yeah, I think that's, like I'm sure I go into that in some one of my blogs somewhere, but it becomes almost a way for um, spiritual people or spiritual teachers to like make themselves look better at my expense because I think he like felt like he was sounding like such the authority on spirituality by making me kind of look stupid or feel bad, like he was making himself look more like he knew what he was talking about or he was extra spiritual or whatever.
And then on the flip side, what if you had been so naive and so new to actually say, oh my gosh, maybe he's right. And you sat on the floor for the rest of the class. And then the next couple of days, you would have been done for like probably a week because your body would have been so inflamed from that. And you would have been way worse off than if you had just stayed in your little lane, in your bubble, and minded your own business, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I tried. I mean, at this point, I cannot hide my illness. It's impossible. Even if people don't notice, like I have a physical limp sometimes, not all the time, and it'll show, and people are like, huh, and they'll see I'm in pain when I'm sitting long. So it's like it'll show sometimes, and then other times it doesn't. But it's like it's so obvious now just in the sheer amount of things I miss in my life. Like if you're confined to your bed 22 hours a day or everywhere you go, you have to lay flat when you get there. It kind of like deters you from going because why would I want to go to like even if it was just like a history class, and everybody's sitting in their desk, like writing their notes, and I'm going to be laying on the floor, like literally laying on. I mean, it causes like this scene, it causes like this ruckus. So there becomes like where you want to hide your disability because you're embarrassed and you don't want to stick out or feel weird.
And then you
And
seclude yourself even more to avoid those situations. So.
yeah, and that's not good either, Um, Yeah, it's this whole, it just goes on. It's so nebulous. I think that's why I've been able to do my whole blog for over a year now, and it'll keep going. I don't even know into the indefinite future because there's so many different facets of it, and energetically, like you were saying, this kind of like predator aspect to it, and then there's like this shame aspect for us personally. Then there's like this self love and empowerment aspect, where we take our power and ourselves back, and we kind of say, this is how it is, and we declare it. And I don't know, there's so many different facets of it. It's like you could go into it forever, you know? I kind of
Yep.
get lost in it sometimes, honestly.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. It's very complicated. We have a couple of comments. Catherine says, "Oh my gosh, yeah, sometimes you just want gross junk food, right?" And that's going to relate to my story too, because I mean, sometimes you just want things that feel good that maybe aren't necessarily good for you, but in the moment, it's going to get you through the next 5 minutes at least. Catherine
Absolutely.
says, "Yes, I did. I had the 5 stages of grief, and I actually loved myself more than I did before I had this illness. I tell people it's worth it."
Yeah, absolutely.
Catherine says, "What a jackass." I agree. Susan says, "I agree. I find it inspiring that you still had the strength and courage to go to that workshop to learn about how to make drums. I feel that he was probably projecting his own insecurities, really." Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes, I think that's the thing about New Age illness shaming and why I talk about it. It's like there's the New Age illness shaming, which is the problem. It's people shaming you for having an illness, like the teacher
Mhm.
did to me. And then there's the other side of it, which is the body positivity side, which is the part that we bring. It's our story, it's who we are. And the New Age illness shaming, I found that a lot of the times when people you for your illness or disability, that it's more about them and their story than it is about you. It's more about their own personal projections, their lack of inner work or around illness. Like illness and disability, honestly, it probably scares the crap out of them, and they they want to feel safe from it ever happening to them. So it becomes this way for, if they quiz you and they say, do you meditate? Do you eat vegetarian food? Do you do this? Do you do that? Blah, blah. And then they find what they think caused it. So they say, hey, you caused your illness with your mindset. That's
They
what did.
find your one tiny flaw and disregard your 10 other perfections, for
Yeah.
sure.
So they'll go with that. You caused it with your mindset. And then they will say to themselves, like in the kind of in the back of their mind, probably in their subconscious, but it couldn't happen to me because I have a good mindset. So it's a way
Right.
for them to kind of like protect themselves from, I guess, like cognitive
It
dissonance in
is.
a way. And
Mm-hmm.
then not to mention too, like there's so many different causes of illness besides law of attraction. There's soul contracts, there's karma, there's genetics, there's environmental toxins, like if you were poisoned by lead as a kid or
Mm-hmm.
something, there's accidents, there's and it could go on forever if you count all the different religions and spiritualities. They're separate beliefs. So it's like the causes of illness, it's like law of attraction is one, or mindset is one of 10 or more or thousands of causes. And if you don't know somebody, you don't know their mindset and you don't know anything about them. How would you know what caused their illness?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy, but it's just so it's kind of like this shortcut. It's this way to spiritual bypass them really doing a solid inner work around their own fear of illness, their own fear of disability.
Yeah. So before we get into spiritual bypass, because that's an important recipe, that's an important ingredient in this whole recipe that
Mm-hmm.
we're making here. So briefly, my experience, the most traumatic experience I had was in 2011 Thanksgiving. I was laid off from my job. Most of you know this story. I was looking for something. I found a yoga place local to me, and I started going. I started going to some of the classes. They're really big into the raw vegan movement. And after about 3 to 4 months of, maybe even 5 months of going there, they sold me that I would be able to reverse my chronic illness. I would be able to drop all the weight. I would be able to have pretty much everything in my life that I've always wanted if I converted to being raw vegan. So I did it. It was really hard. I attended all the cooking classes. I even, some of you are familiar with the Gerson therapy. I did the Gerson therapy for a year, which is a very labor intensive system. It's literally you live to feed yourself these very specific meals and this cocktail of supplements. And it's basically it's for people who have cancer or degenerative diseases. And it does work. People do heal from it, but it's something you have to be like 100% committed to. You have to drop everything in your life to be able to make it work. So I was doing this. I was juicing several times a day. I would start my morning very early. I would juice, and then I would have to keep juicing all day, and then I would be eating my raga vegan meals and stuff like that. And about 6 months of doing this, I did reverse some things, like my blood pressure went down. I wasn't borderline diabetic anymore. I didn't have as much acne and stuff like that. I did feel better, and I was exercising. And I'll never forget this moment, but the yoga instructor, after a class one day, I was wearing a tube top, and I'm a big girl, I had my flabby arms flapping in the wind during yoga, and she pulled me aside, and she said that my top was inappropriate for the class, and she waited till everybody left, and I actually had a gift that I was going to give her. I made her something, a little clay thing, like a little flower or something like that. I was going to give it to her. Yeah. I did give it to her, and I waited till everybody left to give it to her. And she says, basically, she said, "Why are you still fat? Like you've been doing all of the raw vegan stuff. You've been doing the Gerson therapy. You've been coming to yoga 3 times a week. She said basically what she was alluding to is that I was stuffing my face with cake and cupcakes and stuff like that, like every single day. And this was after she told me that my top was inappropriate and things like that. And I was just like, I guess I had like this like look of deer in a headlights when it happened, because I had grown so much to love her, and I thought she was leading me down this path. And this has been a pattern in my life. It was my first real experience where the people that you look up to shatter this vision, that you have of them. And after that class, I never went back. About 6 months later, I drove around, and I was looking to see, they usually had like a class schedule posted on the door, so I could go and look at the classes upcoming. The place was gone. It was completely gone. Just like, I don't know whatever happened to it. Yeah. So that was my situation. And she didn't know that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And one of the symptoms is uncontrollable weight gain. Like no matter what you do, no matter what you eat, you'll always be fat unless you want to dedicate like 4 hours a day to exercise every single day, And I was trying to work and trying to do Gerson therapy at the same time. And at some point, like I just had to kind of give in and live my life. But that was my first ever shaming. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really sorry that happened to you. It's so painful.
Pamela says, I bet she was brought down off the pedestal really fast. Yep. Catherine says, how dare she? Yeah.
Yeah, it's messed up because I guess her thinking was that you were cheating on your Gerson or something. Like you were saying you were doing Gerson, but you were really eating.
Yeah, she called me a liar, I guess, without saying that I was a liar.
Yeah, without so many words, I guess.
Trista says she lifted you up only to slam you down. Typical human. And the thing is, I know that she was actually like very concerned about me. I know it came from a good place, and that's the thing that most people that are the offenders, like they think they're actually doing a good thing, but in reality, they're just hurting you.
Yeah, and and that's what my work is for, for people with illness and disability. And then that's what the body positive movement for women is for. It's like we're over here. American women, our average size is a size 12, I think, in America.
Or even 14 now. I mean, it's pretty large.
Yeah, and it's like our actual bones are like so wide on our hips and stuff. It's like you're not going to like shave off your bones. It's like you can't make your size 14 skeleton a size 2 skeleton. It's the way we were made, and it becomes this I don't even know. It just becomes, I get so upset about that. Like, I don't know, it frustrates me so bad because it's like, why should we hate who we are? It drives me crazy.
Okay, so back to the spiritual bypassing. You were just starting to hint on that. Can you explain what that is to us?
Oh yeah. Okay, so spiritual bypass. It's basically like when something triggers you, or you just don't want to talk about something or give it a whole lot of discernment. And so rather than looking into the details of a situation or doing your inner work or meditating or, I don't know, praying or whatever it is you need to do to clear whatever it is that's coming up for you or triggering you, you instead just say, um, what you think about comes about, and you leave it at that. So with illness shaming, that's the example, is when you say what you think about comes about, like all
Mm-hmm.
jauntily, like, and then there were smurfs, like this is just
Like,
spiritual knowledge.
mm-hmm.
I'm so whatever knowledgeable or wise or whatever, but they are bypassing the very real aspect that people have incurable genetic disorders. They have incurable injuries that were done to them, like car accidents or things happen to the human body throughout life. um, they are bypassing that, they're just bypassing any of the solid work and any of the solid inner work about that. So then it's like it goes into their own fears. So if this particular, not everybody has a fear of becoming sick or becoming disabled. I think if you can have this topic come up in a social circle or social way, the way it always does in conversation, someone has an illness or disability and it comes up, and you're totally fine just you don't have to go into explaining their illness or finding the cause or blaming it on something, or you don't go into this spiritual what you think about comes about thing. Then, and you have a feeling of equanimity and balance, so you don't feel the need, I think it's this
Mm-hmm.
need to say something about it. You can just stay silent, you can talk about something else, you can give it the adequate space it needs and honor it needs, but you don't feel the need to go into why did this happen, what's wrong with you, this whole deal, because that getting flustered and that not being able to drop the topic of someone else's illness, that's a symptom of the spiritual bypassing. That's
Mm-hmm.
a symptom that there's something in you that needs to explain this in a certain way, that needs to not look at your own fear, that needs to not feel triggered.
I love that. So what you're saying is that it's not that we can't point out illness, or it's not that we can't acknowledge it, but it's that we don't have to try to control other people's response to that. It can be something that just exists, and it doesn't have to be something, as you're saying, that's explained away or bypassed spiritually through these very cheeky little one-liner things that you would see on a meme somewhere on Facebook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
It's just something, it just is, right? We're in the human form, like we incarnate to the earth and we're given a physical body. And it's like if we cut our arm off, we're going to be missing part of our arm. And it doesn't mean we're a terrible person. It just means we got part of our arm cut off. And it just is, right? So I think the law of attraction is excellent. And The Secret, I actually liked it, honestly. And there are so many things you can do with mindset and drawing what you want towards you with the law of attraction, thinking positively, and all these things. But I think what triggers a lot of people is the unsettling thought that they can't control everything in the whole entire universe, you know.
Catherine Wilson says, well, the issue is that other people are not our business. And I love that.
I love that too. And I struggled so much, like before. I mean, now I'm doing a lot better, but like when I first got this visible illness, I would struggle so much with people asking me so many questions in a row, and just 20 questions, bam, 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 and I would try to answer them because I was trying to be polite. But at some point, it's like you just want to say, it's none of your business.
Mm.
But how do you say it's none of your business and still be polite?
Because then you're the bad guy. But I guess now that you have your blog, you can just say, you can just go read my blog.
It's so funny. Yeah. That is literally why I created my blog original. Well, I created it for my tarot reading thing. And then and then it became this illness thing. And then now I'm like, oh, this is great. Because if anyone ever illness shames me ever again, I can literally just forward them a link, you know? I don't have to say
Yep.
anything.
I'm curious, you brought up tarot, so I'm curious how your psychic abilities in tarot reading kind of the 5 minute version, because we're at 45 after now, but how that kind of all rolled into each other, how that snowballed into each other. How did that work out?
Okay, so how did my psychic abilities apply to what I'm doing with illness shaming? Okay.
And your tarot reading.
Yeah, okay, so I started off a couple years ago and I was like, okay, let me make my website to read tarot online. And I was like, awesome. Then I started taking these challenges from other entrepreneurs. One of them was share your heart, show your work, and it's all about authenticity. And I was like, okay, let me do this. So I did the challenge and I realized immediately that how could I be authentic about who I was as a person and who I was as a tarot reader if I never mentioned my illness? Like I'm literally stuck in bed 22 hours a day because of my illness. If I can't tell people that, then there's no way I could ever claim even like a shred of authenticity. And so I was like, yeah, man, I was like, I'm going to have to like go public or whatever. And so then I did, and I started writing blogs about my invisible illness. And then people just started writing to me, and people started everything, writing, reading all my blogs, and they were just like connecting with the message. And then I just kind of saw how needed it was, you know, this work that I'm doing. And there wasn't any way really to not do it after that.
I think it's so important that you've realized very early on, and forgive me for saying this, but it's this whole, I'm being cheeky right now, but the law of attraction thing where you invoke these sort of experiences to get enlightened faster and to come to this awakening. But and so you've realized very quickly in a short amount of time, just because of how maybe how distinguishable, traumatic, whatever word you want to use, that having an illness or condition is you realize right away how important your story is to your own personal brand, especially in your coaching practice. And that's a piece that a lot of people are missing. And it's so great to hear that you've fully accepted and come to terms with. And now not only are you in a state of acceptance, but you're also now in a state of thriving because you are so connected to your story and it's such a passionate thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important for spiritual entrepreneurs to really connect with their vital truth of who they are. And if they can bring that forward as part of their brand or part of their business, it's incredibly powerful. There's like nothing that can stop you after that.
What were some of the struggles when you actually came out? Like you mentioned, I'm going to have to go public. So did you face any backlash with that?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Like at first, obviously, at first it did not go well, right? When my illness first became totally apparent and unable to hide, um, let me see. It's like the longest story, so I'm trying to think how I can shorten it. Okay, so before it became totally obvious and I couldn't hide it, right? I've had this illness since birth. I didn't know I had it. And then I went to college. I did all my jobs. Then I worked. I was a yoga instructor. I studied spirituality, did all these things. But I always hid my illness. I never told anybody about it because it was irrelevant to who I was as a person. Mm-hmm. And so I had always been in the New Age spirituality field, but my illness was never, ever a subject because I just didn't tell anyone. Why tell anybody? There was no point. It was irrelevant. So then when I was unable to hide it, I was like, whoa, I told people, okay, I can't do this, or this is what's happening because of this. And then I faced the people would get angry with me that I didn't work. There was like angry, like hatred almost, because how dare I not work and, you know, just like lay around.
What do you think, you're special or something?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it was like people would get angry. People would like grill me for answers. And I would, I would feel so awkward, like how I was put on the spot with that teacher. I'd feel so awkward because it's always like people are in a group of people watching you. And I would try to explain, and then I would feel so drained. I would feel drained, and then I would feel terrible because no matter how many times you answer those type of questions that are coming from that place, you will never give an answer that's good enough. So they will not stop asking until you are completely like a bottomless pit, like all your energy is gone, like you're a
And they're
puddle.
still not going to understand anyways. So,
They will never ever get it. Um, so I went from that to getting, I would get angry about it. And then I got to the point of like, it's none of their business. And then I finally got to the point of like, I had accepted my illness, but they still hadn't accepted my illness. No matter what I said, it was like I was at a point of love and acceptance for my path and who I am in the world and my body, and accepting it for what it is and loving it anyways. And then they would come in with, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it just got, they just, it was like they weren't accepting me for who I was, basically. And then it became, I don't know. I don't even remember the question.
that's okay. I think you did great. So you've seen this void, you've seen this need. There obviously are a bunch of spoonies out there. There are a lot of people that maybe that are hearing about this for the first time that are like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So you've actually created a support group specifically for spoonies. Do you want to talk about your group? And I'll go ahead and link it here.
Sure. It's called The Wounded Healer. And it's called The Wounded Healer. And then it's like spiritual spoonies, EDS, light work, and a whole bunch of other stuff on the end. And that's a group where we can talk about spiritual bypass, new age illness shaming, where we can validate our struggles. If we have somebody who says something like that to us, we can call on each other at any time. We have a Thursday thread. So we don't want the group to be totally overrun with like complaining and whining all the time, but there is a place for it, right? I mean, we have to be authentic. We have to be real. This is something negative that's coming at us that we are just like, oh my gosh, like, how do we deal with this? So we have the Thursday burn down the house where we can just say anything. And then other spoonies, other people with disabilities are there to, cheer you up or whatever you need on that day. And then we
Or
have
just to give you an amen.
Exactly. I feel you. I know how it is.
So you're actually launching your brand new coaching offer, your resilience coaching. Do you want to talk about that for a moment and what that means?
Yeah. So I created the resilience coaching for people who may have an illness, disability, or condition themselves. And really what resilience coaching is for is when you're at that place of non-acceptance, when you're at that place of hating your illness, when you're at that place of being totally pissed about all the stuff people are saying to you, when you're at that place of rejecting every single thing about your life and you're just like, I refuse, but you still have your illness, like you still have your disability, it's not really going away. Or just kind of like that tower moment when everything just kind of falls away and you're like, wow, that just got really real. So I developed resilience coaching to coach people through that, how to learn how to love themselves, how to learn how to accept their disability, how to become resourceful, how to become fierce, exercises, spiritual exercises that an individual person may need. Whatever it is someone needs, we're going to work through it with the coaching. And that's what I'm there for, is kind of like the really deep, dark, ugly, nitty gritty type of stuff is what this coaching is for.
And here's the distinction too, is you're actually someone who gets it. You're not just a regular coach. You're not just a regular person who, a regular psychologist or anything like that. Mm-mm. You're a coach that actually has experience in this field, and that is something that you can't fabricate. You can't make that up. And you're only going to be able to, as a potential client that's watching right now, you're only going to be able to have that relationship with someone who actually has been through there, in your words, you said, Kai, before, that you have walked through the fire yourself. And so you know what you're talking about here. You are the expert. You actually have created a coupon. You actually have a special offer here. Let's see if I can get the coupon code for you real quick. Tell us about the coupon.
Yeah, so I made a coupon. It is good until a week from today. So next Friday at midnight, it'll expire. It is for you guys, only you guys of this group, no one else. And it's 10% off of your resilience coaching sessions.
For
So
brand new clients.
yeah, for brand new clients. So there's a link and it goes to my client application. So you just fill out the client application. And when it gets to the part where it says, why did you choose me as a coach? Put in the coupon code before next Friday. And then I will know that you get the discount offer from this group.
And you're so generous. You actually have a free gift for us. I'm going to go ahead and get that link. It's an ebook. And what does it go over?
It is Body Positivity for the Spiritual Feel. And it is how to, let me read the title, How to Better Serve Your Clients and Friends with Invisible Illness or Disability. So it's got like, it's an ebook, so it explains what I'm talking about with New Age illness, shaming, and spiritual bypass a little bit in the book part. And then the end of the book is 2 pages with just bullet points, and they're do's and don'ts. So it's like a really quick way for like a spiritual entrepreneur to be like, okay, am I doing any of these things? Am I not doing any of these? What am I doing? And then it's a really good way for people with illness or disability. They can forward this book to others as a conversation starter and kind of to help people get this dialogue going of, you know, I guess it's basically like etiquette rules. I don't know. It's gonna be.
I've accidentally just posted the wrong link. Give me 1 second. I'm fixing it right now.
Okay, yeah. Like instead of them having like if someone is listening and they have an illness or disability, and instead of them referring their friend or family member or spiritual coach or whatever to my blog, which is like 1,000 miles long. Mm-hmm. They can just go to this ebook and it's like 10 tips for do's and 10 tips for don'ts. And it's simple, straight and to the point. So they're going to get a really good grasp of it really fast.
Okay, so it's really educational about that etiquette that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's definitely valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a down and dirty guide to not offending people.
That's awesome. All right, so everybody, please go join her group. It's actually already linked. If you go to the Heart-Centered Spiritual Business Support Group page, if you look at the top, you're going to see this bar that has like recommended groups. If you look on there, you can very easily get to Kai's group. We have just a few moments left. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to say to Kai before we end today's stream? We'll go ahead and just wait a couple moments and see what comes through here. I'm so thankful that you took the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today, Kai, and share this really valuable information because it's really life-changing. And I think that it's only going to help us interact with each other in a way that's going to promote respect for one another, respect for not only our positive accomplishments, but also the things that we are limited in as well. And it's just a wonderful thing. Catherine says, thank you, Kai.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about love, love and equality and having love for the people around you. So if someone has a disability or condition, you're not going to be like hating on them or saying, this is what I hate about you. You're going to say, this is what I love about you. You're awesome.
And you're just a fantastic role model because you are also someone who is dealing with this and you're also running a very successful business and now you're opening up a coaching practice. So for everybody who's here who is dealing with things like this, what would you say to them?
Don't give up, it's terrible sometimes, to not beat yourself up more on top of your struggles that you already have. Just hang in there. And it's, you don't have to feel like you're a wimp. I think sometimes we get mad at ourselves because we're not tough enough or we break down or we get upset or we think we could handle things better. And it's important to realize that this is like a monumental deal if you're dealing with this type of serious illness or disability, it's not any small cookies. And I think that you're doing a great job. I really do. I think whoever you are, if you're dealing with this issue, that you're already seriously kicking some ass right now.
Yeah, it's hard enough running a business. Running a business on top of having an illness or a condition or a disability, you've got your work cut out for you, but it is possible and people are doing it and you can do it too.
Absolutely. Like there's a future for sure.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We will see you in the Facebook group.
Sounds good. Thank you, Christina. Bye, guys.
Bye.